Hey, welcome back. Just breezed right through hour two. And when you have a whopper of a show like you have today, you need a closer. You need somebody to close it up strong. And there's nobody better than this. Pavlina Osta joins Frankie and I in the final segment for the WTF. Pavlina, you might want to know, is the host of the If God Had a Podcast. Yes. She's also a Guinness Book of World Record holder for the most interviews in 24 hours. And she's our resident millennial reporter and talks to us about what younger folks are thinking. And a lot of this stuff pertains to our audience, who are the older people. Before we do that, Pavlina, Frank usually corrects my mistakes in the show and stuff. What's the facts today, Frank?
Well, there are no uncorrected errors that I saw. You cited reporting from Bill O'Reilly when you were talking about Bernie Sanders being a millionaire. I don't believe that Bill O'Reilly actually broke that story. I've seen that covered in a number of other outlets before O'Reilly.
Well, I heard O'Reilly on the Bernie and Sid morning show today on 77 WABC, heard here right in New York City, and he was talking about how he had an article about Bernie's past transgressions on his site. Okay. So I was citing where I heard about it. So my apologies. Right. And Pavlina, my apologies to you for having to put up with my mistakes in your segment. But there's one story here that you brought us today, and Pavlina does all her own homework. She brings us stuff that she thinks pertains to our audience. And the future of recycling seems to be getting pretty serious these days, where in some places they're just not going to take it anymore, and they put a little tag on it or something.
Yeah, and in a time where, we are so worried about the climate change and we're worried about our environment and everything, you'd think that they would be a little bit more lenient on these kinds of things, but your recycling might be getting rejected. So basically what is happening is if your recycling is contaminated or if it's not in the right bin, it's just going to go in the landfill. It's going to go with the rest of the trash, and it's not going to be recycled. So that's been a big thing. And I know for, in New York at least, you have 10 different recycling bins, one for paper, one for cardboard, like so many different options. It's very confusing. I don't know where half the stuff goes. Like, I hope I'm doing it right. So it's very interesting.
One trick you could do is leave an envelope with a couple of Benjamins in it.
Oh, stop.
I'm just saying, sometimes they might overlook it. But no, some really interesting reporting you had here that, going back, let's call it, just about 5 years ago, about 10 years ago, China was taking 90% of our garbage. Yes. China was taking it, and then they were having people pick through it, and they put what goes in the landfill, but there were valuables and recyclables, and they bore all the cost of that. Right. Now they're down to like 40%.
Yeah, and they're getting even more strict on it now, because if it's contaminated, they just don't want to deal with it.
So almost 50% of our garbage, which we were getting rid of and sending over to China, can no longer go to China because they don't want it. So that's going to cause this stuff to be piling up here? Yeah,
so it's going to be going to the landfills. It's not going to be recycled, which is not good for, there's so much plastic out there. A lot of it goes into the ocean, hurts, the ocean animals. It's not a good chain effect.
So I want to switch gears a little bit because some of you in our audience may be affected by this also. MoviePass went out of business. They claimed bankruptcy. They're not out of business, but they're in bankruptcy, okay? And apparently, 12,000 subscribers of there may be owed money. So if you're sitting home and you used to be a MoviePass member.
I was me. I was a MoviePass.
Frankie was a MoviePass. Yeah. I bet you guys got to get 100 each back.
I know. I'm waiting for my check.
And you at home, you're a MoviePass subscriber. What's happening with this, Pavlina? Last minute here.
So MoviePass, which is the movie ticket subscription you would have, it's $10 a month, and you'd be able to see unlimited movies. They, like you said, went into bankruptcy liquidation, I guess, and they also owe their subscribers some money. Like you said, it's around $1.2 million because they were unaccredited, unsecured creditors, I guess is what it was. And yeah, so they're totally out. It would have, Frank said this earlier, it would have been nice to have something like that right now because of Oscars, season.
You know what, Pavlina, thank you very much. Yeah. You got to check it out wherever you get your podcast. Check out the If God Had a Podcast, because if he did, she'd be hosting it, and she does host it, so you figure it out. We're going to figure it out like we do every single day tomorrow, when you tune in tomorrow for Liquid Lunch at noon, like you always do. And we will be here breaking it all down. Same bat time, same bat channel, more Liquid Lunch.